Football Podcast. This is a pre-recorded show of a pre-recorded Buckeye Lounge special with Mr. Vaughn Broadnax, former Ohio State fullback and legendary football player at Ohio State. I'm your host, Shaun, and with me, as always, TG, the Wolverine Slayer. Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to a discussion. Anytime we can talk about the Buckeyes, I'm all for it.
That's awesome.
Vaughn, you want to let the viewers know a little bit about yourself when you played? Talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, sure. I was initially recruited by Woody. Unfortunately, he got fired. Then I got recruited by Earl Bruce, and I was Earl Bruce's first full class, I would say. That was the 1980 recruiting class, and started as fullback and played fullback my 4 years at Ohio State and graduated in '84.
Now, I was reading you did get moved to middle guard a little bit too, didn't you? Did you play? Did you actually play in any games on defense, or was that just in practice?
Unfortunately, not. I always had a penchant for defense, but Earl really wasn't into two-way players, and Tim Spencer and Jimmy Gale were steadfast against me moving to middle guard because they wanted me to block for them. So anywhere I could help, I was willing to.
So I'm gonna ask this: what was it like being at Ohio State under Earl Bruce? What is your most memorable stories about him?
Well, Earl was a colorful coach, and being a Woody Hayes disciple coming in, and he kind of ruffled some feathers initially, changing the Ohio State TV show, so to speak, from BNS to RTV. That was interesting. But he was a fiery coach at times, especially during games. And, some of the pre-game speeches and halftime speeches, depending on where we were in the game, he'd get real fired up, and really enjoyed his speeches and I'll say inspirational yelling.
Oh, really? So, what was it like being at Ohio State when it comes to your team? What are your most memorable games during your time with the Ohio State Buckeyes?
Well, they weren't always the victories. Sometimes they were the losses. I go back to 1982 when we were playing against Stanford and John Elway. Now, in '81, the year before, we were out in Palo Alto, and you could just see a difference in John Elway's ball. And it was a perfect spiral. It had that kind of whistle to it. Mm-hmm. And we got him that year. I actually got injured like first quarter. But we got him that year. The next year, he came into Ohio State, and we were ahead, and there was a late interception by Mike Tomczak. And I think that was probably the beginning of John Elway's final drive career, because he took the ball down the field and threw for a touchdown to end up winning the game. So, playing against John Elway, that was always memorable because you saw the greatness. But also playing against Michigan, two of my sophomore and junior games were probably my biggest highlights of my career as far as memories. I was fortunate to get a good block for Art Schlichter to get the game-winning touchdown in '81, and then '82, I was able to get a touchdown, and surprisingly, I think it was like over the prior 10 years of that matchup that the winning or the home team did not score a touchdown, which is incredible. So we were able to break that spell and go on and win that victory or win that game. And both games were upsets. So, you talk about you throw out the records. That's truly a game that where you threw out the records.
I mean, you got to be pretty excited because when you were coming in, being recruited, I mean, 79, they were, undefeated and almost won a national championship. So, you're coming in, I believe in 80, were you guys ranked number one when you first came in?
There were, I mean, either one or two, depending on the service. But yeah, we had a great team. Now we lost some early battles to UCLA. Then we were upset by, um, oh, well, we lost to Michigan as well. But we just had some quirky things happen, and you know, football is a game of inches, and had the inches been on our side, we would have been undefeated. But that didn't happen. But one of the things on our 80 team, our record-setting 80 team, was the defense. Um, we had, I think we gave over 600 yards to Dave Wilson from Illinois in a high-scoring fest, and of course that set a record. Our DBs weren't too pleased, but we won the game. But you think back of that and lessons learned.
Yeah.
Nick Saban was the DB's coach at that time.
Oh,
So, had 2 years with Nick, and but you saw that steady improvement over his 2 years.
nice. You were a four-year letterman, which was kind of rare back then for a freshman to come in, start. I mean, in 4 years you got a letter all year, all 4 years. What was it like playing, starting as a freshman?
Well, I think you come in, and I was a big fullback, and Earl liked the big blocking fullback. So it was competitive with the guys that were here, but I edged them out in camp, and so I was the backup fullback. Now Tim Spencer, he moved from tailback to fullback. Tim was a hell of an athlete, hell of a running back, but blocking is a necessity as an OSU fullback.
Mhm.
So I was second team, so I got to play. And what I really liked about Earl was he would put me at fullback and Tim at tailback at the goal line. And we were very successful with that formation. And it was a precursor of the next 2 years as Tim was a tailback and I was a fullback for the remaining 2 years. So, but you gotta, as a freshman coming in, you kind of have to prove yourself because you've got the veterans who, see this big guy, what can he do? And, they try to lay some wood on you and things like that during fall practice, but you give it back.
Yeah.
And so I earned the respect of my teammates, and it was a good experience as a freshman coming in.
Okay, so I want to ask, what was you got drafted to the NFL draft, right?
No, I was a free agent to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, you were okay. So what was that process like though before you figured out you went to Tampa Bay?
It was interesting. My senior year, I uh, I always wanted to wrestle at Ohio State. Now, my freshman year was my own fault because my freshman fall, I just had a bunch of things going on. Both of my parents were hospitalized. My father ended up passing away that May. Matter of fact, the day before the spring game. And it was a tough battle. So I couldn't, because of my academic lack of prowess, I couldn't wrestle my freshman year. So my senior year, after my senior season, ended up going to the Hula Bowl, came back and started wrestling. But then, you have the combine coming up and we had two combines. We had a combine in New Orleans and then you had a combine also in Seattle because it wasn't together at the time. So you had combines to prepare for. So um, I had made a promise to my mother that I was going to graduate on time. So all that compiled, I had to give up my wrestling dream at Ohio State after wrestling about 8 matches and just saying, well, I can put this on hold. So um, getting ready for the NFL, it wasn't as intense as it is today. There weren't a lot of pre-combine camps or
Pro
programs.
days.
Yeah, so you worked out with maybe your track coach to work on your 40 time. You did some more things on your own. Agents helped you tell you what you need to do and things like that. But sometimes you make some statements that upset some coaches as well during that time. So, and during the draft, it was interesting because I was actually taking an exam, and when I got home, there was a message left for me. A familiar voice said, "We drafted you, Vaughn. We'll be in touch." Blah blah blah. So I thought I had been drafted, but ended up not getting drafted. So that next couple of days, I was called by like Cincinnati, Kansas City, Dallas, Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay was an interesting situation because Jim Gruden, who is John Gruden and Jay Gruden's father, he recruited me for Notre Dame, and I had a very good relationship with him. Well, he was the running back coach at Tampa Bay. So um, add that to the fact that they offered the largest signing bonus as well. I went with Tampa Bay. So that's how that process went.
What was it like being in the NFL?
It, compared to Ohio State at that time and comparing programs to like Ohio State to Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay was more relaxed. Um, our practices weren't that intense. So it was quite a change from two a days where you're hot and sweaty and you're uniformed up all the time in your preseason. Then the preseason games were different. They weren't they were intense to a point, but they weren't as comparatively speaking to what I was used to at Ohio State. Ohio State, everybody's trying to kill each other during scrimmages. And the pros, it was competitive, but guys weren't trying to lay each other out.
Now, people didn't realize you were a champion wrestler in high school. Were you or were you not?
Yeah, yeah. I was runner up in a close match. My lost 10-9 to Jeff Goltz my junior year in the finals. And he ended up going to Ohio State as well. And he was a freshman All American. And then my senior year, I won the title. I was undefeated. And wrestling was my first love and will always be my love. So
Do you think that helped you out a lot with your football? You having a wrestling background like you did?
I think so. And I've always been under the mindset that if I look at the successful college athletes and successful pro athletes, 90% of them were multi-sport athletes in high school because I think high school, be it wrestling, basketball, track, baseball, all of those sports help you develop something for football.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball, hand and eye coordination, basketball, having that explosiveness, change of a direction, things like that. Wrestling, getting that core strength developed. So all of those sports help you mold you. And I preach to parents, I preach to coaches. Do not limit your child to one sport. Allow them to develop, and they're either going to develop into one sport or they're going to develop where they have to make a choice. And it's good to always have that ability to make a choice.
But
Yeah,
that's
because you see a lot of kids these days specializing in one sport. So that's, I think that's kind of doing a kid a disservice. But like you
yeah.
said, it's
Oh,
good to play multiple sports.
I agree. I mean, but you never know. Like my sport was wrestling, and my football opportunities were an offshoot of wrestling because I was being recruited for schools, by schools for wrestling. And, I was being recruited by Nebraska, Iowa, Chris Ford at Ohio State, North Carolina State. Um, those were schools that were offering me um, athletic grants and aid. They weren't always the full package. So when I got the opportunity and started getting recruited for football, I said, okay, well, I can get a full ride on a football scholarship, and that's the route I took. But I don't believe I would have had the exposure or the physical development had I not been a wrestler. And I also participated in track, but you know, track was kind of different for me where I did the weights, the shot and disc, but
Hmm.
also I jumped and long jumped, and I ran the sprints on occasion. So, because I always try to do things differently.
Hmm. How fun was that running track? By the way, I just want to know.
Oh, it's great. You know, it was funny. High jump was my best sport, just because I liked the relaxation. Um, long jump I enjoyed, and so when you see this big guy running down through the long jump pit, making a jump, and then you see him going over a high jump bar, uh, and you know, uh, it, it was a interesting crowd that gathered, so to speak.
I bet.
I bet it was. I do want to know what do you think of today's day and age? Like, what is your thoughts on NIL and the transfer portal?
I tell everybody every day I wish I was born 40 years later because I'm not. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I see the deals these kids are getting. Even and I'll tell you guys one thing I did. I did a paper for Econ 400 talking about the money that was being generated by OSU football. Now tickets were $17 a game at that time, but you times that times 80,000. You include the food revenues and things like that, other sponsorships. Um, and at that time, a tuition was only what $1,600 to $2,000 a year. That's for 3 quarters. Then you have your room and board, which was another $2,000. We weren't getting our just due
Hmm.
by just getting a scholarship. So, when people say, "Oh, you got a free ride," I said, "Well, if it's a free ride, show me what bus I can put my kids on, and they can get that free scholarship." No, it's earned,
Yeah.
and you
Hmm.
you have to do the things. And at that time, when I was playing, it's like a dinosaur now, but they didn't have limitations on practice. So if we had to practice 3 hours or 4 hours, we had to do it. And they did take advantage of that because we were generally at the facility all day. After class, of course, classes were over generally about 2 o'clock, and then you were at practice from till about 6 o'clock, and then you ate. So it was more involved, but again, going back to NIL, hey, I'm jealous. I wish, but I understand it, and I just enjoying seeing the battles now of money that is above the table instead of under the table. Because for
Yeah.
years, not so much at Ohio State or even in the Big Ten, there was a little bit of it, but the SEC, um, I can't tell you the things that I was offered to come to a couple of SEC schools, and I had no intention of going to the SEC. No way, no how. So, but I applaud the NIL opportunities for the kids today in all sports.
What do you think of the transfer portal?
Transfer portal is interesting. I think it needs to be reined in a little more. Maybe have a one one once or twice opportunity per year to enter the portal, because you're putting coaches at risk, because they don't know if they're going to and they're recruiting the whole year. But if a guy leaves after spring and they don't have an opportunity to get a portal guy, that kind of handcuffs their recruiting, and vice versa. They kids get recruited over all the time. So if a kid gets signed and somebody doesn't have an opportunity to leave, that's a challenge as well. So it needs to be tweaked. I never agreed with having to wait out a season um, uh, back in the day. Now there were instances where I'll give you an instance at Ohio State. Villanova uh, shut down his football program for the 1981 season. And we ended up getting four guys from that team and four contributors from that team. So those things are different, but I've always said if you're going to leave, there's no need to sit out a year.
Yeah, and it wasn't fair to these kids because these coaches would promise them that they were going to be there for their whole time there. These kids go there, then all of a sudden these coaches would just up and leave, and there'd be no penalty for them. These kids were being punished for it. So I'm glad that that got resolved and those kids get a chance because you don't always fit in with the new coach that comes in. You don't fit into their,
Yeah.
they didn't recruit you. You might not fit in with the system that they run. So I think it's great for kids to be able to go somewhere else where they can get some playing time.
And on top of that, some of them get to make big checks too. I
Now
know you think.
let's not forget the money. Now
Yeah.
you see some anomalies occurring. The Felix Ojo kid going to Texas Tech. Well, I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked because if Texas Tech can play a, softball pitcher $1 million,
Yeah.
they, they have the funds to step it up on the football side of things. So I don't bemoan the kids taking the money, but, you've got to look past 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. What is your development going to be? What is your exposure going to be after you leave the school? And that's important as well. And I think if you look at a Jeremiah Smith, he is he's not he could not find a better place to land than Ohio State, exposure wise, development wise, and you got a natty under your belt. So you
As a
combine
freshman.
yes, and you combine that with that exposure, those opportunities are innumerable. And that's what you got to look at as a kid.
I
Oh, we're
think that I think that when we like talk about the NIL deals, because there are new rules being in place now, it's not complete yet because there's still some tweaks that need to be done. But with the rules in place, they are making it to where you can't just pay a kid outward with an NIL collective. You literally have to give them legitimate NIL for name, image, and likeness. So you have to they have to work for that money for real now. Like they really do. They can't just get money out of nowhere. So I actually like that. But also with the revenue sharing, it's also giving these kids a chance to make money that they're making for the school to be given to them. And there is a cap in place, and it has to force some of these schools to be smarter. Now, are all schools doing it? No. Some of them are actually going to be in financial trouble because they're just spending out of their woodwork. But I actually think if you look at what you do with the NIL, you have to be smart with how you spend it. Because I look at a high state structure, most of the money is for retention, middle part for the transportal, and then the bottom is for recruiting. Now, it's not to say these kids ain't getting paid, but they're not going to get paid as much as like the proven guys that they get out of the portal or the proven guys that are on their roster already. These kids got to come earn it. Where yeah, whereas when you look at everybody else, you got teams like Oregon, Scum, USC, Texas, all them just throwing out big waves of cash, and it's like, why would you do that?
Well, when you got the Phil Knights, you've got the Larry Ellison, surprisingly now Michigan booster.
Yeah.
When you've got
Because his girlfriend is a Michigan fan. That's
yeah,
it.
yes,
If his girlfriend won a Michigan fan, he ain't
his,
putting no money on Michigan.
his young girlfriend.
Yeah.
I think Larry's pushing 80 or he's maybe past 80. But anyway, I
Yeah.
don't digress. But anyway, um, when it's about the money, it tells you about the kid as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about Jeremiah Smith that I think, he had good advisors. His uncles, his father, they said, hey, you can get more money going to a Miami, maybe going to a Florida State. But when you look at the total development package, you look at the exposure. There is no school that turns on TVs more than Ohio State University. And when you combine that and you look at the long run, that's where we can win. And I think those kids, those level-headed kids with good advisement behind them, generally they'll end up at Ohio State because they look at the whole package.
Yeah.
Well, also, Ohio State has an advantage because they're in Columbus, which is,
The
there's a lot of
capital.
Fortune 500 companies, in the city right there. So there's a lot of opportunities for these kids to make a lot of money, outside of football. So, I
And when
mean,
you look at Ohio State too, like what is like Vaughn? I know you are one of the many Buckeye players who would say if you're a Buckeye, you're set for life because of so many opportunities that are out there for you. So it's like it's not just the fact that as a Buckeye, like say your career doesn't work out because of injuries. Like we see what happened with Cameron Bagg, Devin Jordan, our current wide receiver coach or assistant wide receiver coach, I should say. They have had their careers ended with injury where it's like if things had worked, if they didn't have career ending injuries, they would be great players, but because it did, but now they have opportunities outside of football too. They have great jobs. I mean, Devin, I think no, like I said, Devin's now the Ohio State assistant wide receiver coach. And Cameron, he's actually working for the university now too, and he's
Yeah.
doing real well. And
And
also for Ohio State, their culture is because they tell it to these kids: if your first thing is about NIL, we don't want you here. We want kids that are going to be all about the team, all about the culture. Because the other thing I love about Ohio State is you put the culture above everything else.
and I always, you know, I live down in Nashville. So I'm dealing with Tennessee fans. Or your Alabama fans, I don't know how that happens in Nashville. Anyway, but it's all about the SEC. And um, you know, when I was asked to wager um, against Tennessee, and I was given points, I gladly took those wagers. And let me just say I made enough to pay for my season tickets this year. But anyway, but
yeah.
but the thing is, when you look at Ohio State and you look at Ohio State former players that are graduated, you look at where they're working, you look at their careers. If you look at TV, you look at sports TV, you look at all the former players that are at ESPN, that are at CBS, that are,
Fox.
and how, I hate to use the term, well spoken we are after an Ohio State career, after our pro career. Um, that's what I show the kids. I show the parents. I say, hey, these are the things we do at Ohio State, not just for the 4 or 5 years they're at the school or 3. This is what we do during your career for your post career after the sports are over. So I'm always proud of that, and I'm the biggest proponent of what OSU can do for you after the game is over.
Now, Vaughn, I just got a quick question I want to ask you. What was it like blocking for Keith Byers?
Well, you know, Keith, Keith is a big dude.
Yes.
Now, I was two, I'd say anywhere during my senior year, right around 240 to 250. And Keith was right there at 230. So, you've got me coming at you, and you've got Keith afterwards. You're opening up holes, and then
Mhm.
Keith is running through those holes. And you could see Keith's talent when he came in as a freshman because he had the mitts. And, I used to laugh at him all the time because he would carry the ball like a loaf of bread. But because of his mitts, you weren't knocking that ball out. He was a huge man, and he was a fast and speedy man. So when you see that combination of talent, and if you can make a crease for him, he's going to get some yards. And his sophomore year, he led the league in touchdowns. So um, he's still a good friend today, and but just the fact that I was able to play with him and get to know him very well, he's a great guy.
I mean, you were a fullback for 2,000. I mean, Tim Spencer was over 1,000 yards rushing, and Keith Byers. That says a lot about not only them but about you. Opening up holes and being able to block for those guys. I mean, you
Well,
deserve a lot of credit there too.
yeah, I think Tim was a little bit selfish because it was 1981 spring that I was given the opportunity to play middle guard, and I loved it. Trust me, Randy Hart, who was our defensive coach, he was always trying to get, hey, can I get Vaughn to play a little defensive line? And I was like, Coach, whatever I can do, because I love to hit people on the offense, and if I had the chance on the defense, that would be even better. So, but getting an opportunity to block for, I blocked for Cal Murray. He was my freshman year, he was another 1,000-yard back. So Tim for 2 years, and then Keith for 2 years. And it was a pleasure for me to block because I love hitting people. I love frustrating them, you know, um, and a lot of things went on beneath the pile back in the day. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Attempts to gouge the eyes, or
Turn an ankle.
get to areas that are considered private. But if you grab a hand and you broke a finger, hey, don't have your hand there. So. But anyway, blocking for those guys was a great opportunity.
Did Keith ever learn? Did Byers ever learn how to protect the ball with those mid hands of his?
Oh yeah, yeah. Keith didn't fumble often at all. So, but I mean, there are times when he just had the ball, his arm extended, with the ball in his hand, trying to get some extra yards. But he wasn't a fumbler at all. I think he's done pretty well.
Okay.
Were you there when I heard Keith? I watched a podcast where he was on, and it was him and Dennis Hobson was on, and they talked about when the football players played the basketball players. Were you part of that?
Listen,
Played them in a game of
I,
basketball.
I will tell you this. This was a constant theme. As I said earlier, we had multi-sport athletes. So Doug Smith from Decatur, Georgia, he was an all-state basketball player. And so when you have 5 or 6 or 7 all-state level basketball players going against the basketball team at the old Larkins Gymnasium, it was quite a battle. I remember, and even after my time, Chris Carter was a hell of a basketball player, all state caliber. His brother was an All American at Indiana. So when you have these athletes compete, it was a show because there was a lot of dunking going on, lots. So there were some competitions there.
I heard they packed the gym. I heard it was pretty
Oh yeah,
full. People just came all around to watch. I heard you know, it was pretty entertaining. Listening to Keith and uh, the Sellers guy that played, Brad Sellers, was it?
he started at Wisconsin, but then he transferred to Ohio State. 7-footer, first round draft pick for the Chicago Bulls. Now mayor of Warrensville Heights, Ohio. So
Wow.
yeah, when you think of the guys that we had there, you know, just and having a gym that just had sidelines and just people watching these guys go against each other in a pickup game, basically. It was quite a sight.
Okay, that's a great story. I'm not gonna lie. I never knew that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Too bad nobody had.
Well,
Nowadays everybody has a phone and would have been able to record it. Too bad no one
Right?
recorded any of those
Oh,
damn
imagine
things.
if that hit that online in today, man. People would have been going stupid.
well. Listen now, we've got some chatter over these last few years. I mean, C.J. Stroud's got a game, and others have games, and they were openly challenging the basketball team to a scrimmage. So we trust me, you've got some guys that could have played college ball but opted for football.
Oh my
So
god, I hope they did because I want to see. Now I want to see that. Now I want to see it.
bragging rights, bragging rights.
Oh, no.
Because it was Brad and Dennis Hobson, and I think Keith Byers was on that show that they were talking about, and they said Byers stood up in the cafeteria and just telling people to come, was challenging the basketball team, and of course Brad said there was a lot of females there, so you had to bring your game because everybody wanted to impress the females, and no one wanted to get showed up. It said it got a little physical at times.
Exactly, exactly. So if you imagine a gym without the stadium style seats, but maybe about 5-10 foot of sideline space, and you got crowds of people just watching these guys go at each other. It's a great show, but there's bragging rights involved
Mm-hmm.
because who I remember there was a defensive lineman, and this was early '90s. His name was Corey Pargo, and I remember he'd team up with Jimmy Jackson in Larkins and go at it against all takers. So there was always healthy competition on the basketball court with basketball players, football players, and even occasional track athletes. You know,
Man,
Man.
that would have been a sight to see because yeah, Dennis Hobson and Brad Sellers. Wow,
yeah.
going against.
And you had some football players that claimed to have a game that really didn't, but they, they were quickly exposed. So
I bet.
Oh no! Oh man!
now you got to go to the bench, man. We bring in somebody else come in. You know, if you don't back it up, it's not any good. So
Yeah.
It is like you just got to sit down, man. Take the yell.
yeah. So I that is something I wish we had video of.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But it's a good thing we didn't have video back then either.
Oh man, them guys would have been roasted to know tomorrow. I'm not gonna lie. They would have got roasted to know tomorrow.
Okay, Vaughn, I got a quick quote. Who would you say was the best player you ever played against and played with?
um, against oh my gosh, I would have to. Well, I mentioned John Elway earlier, but I'd also say Carl Banks because we had so many head-to-head battles. He was a defensive end. I was constantly blocking him, and he'd win some, I'd win some. So, but I recognize his outstanding talent. That's why he was, a giant for so many years. But played with, oh my gosh, it's
So many to pick from.
You can name a few.
literally. You know, I can start with my freshman year, and I'm walking in, and there's Keith Ferguson. There is, he was a 6'5", 6'6", lean, tough, mean defensive end from Miami, who I never saw any coach ever raise their voice at.
Dang.
I, had Michael Guess, Um, uh, may he rest in peace, Todd Bell. Todd Bell was one
Yeah.
of those guys. He was a state champion, even held the record for the long jump, ran a 9,600 yard dash, could play basketball out of the gym himself. So when I think about those guys that were upperclassmen, just in awe of the things they could do. And then, of course, Keith, he's always going to be one of the best athletes, best players that I've played with. You got Jim Lachey, who I watched run a 100-meter dash or 100-meter relay in high school at the state meet for St. Henry. So you see this big guy, and he's running a 400-meter relay race. So
Offensive tackle. Wow.
tons of
Oh,
guys,
jeez.
and then you had other athletes. Maybe they didn't pan out, so to speak. I've got to talk about the legend of Sleepy Holland. Um, Jay Holland, he was a defensive back, and he came in I remember when he came in as a freshman, and we had these qualifying runs. He made those runs look like a walk in the park. And he ran like a deer, jumped like a deer, athletically. I remember his freshman year, we were playing Northwestern, and we were beating him, I don't know, by 60 points at that time or something like that. And they were calling for the what we called the AYOs at that time. AYOs, they had benches, first team, second team, and AYOs. And I always wondered what the heck was AYOs when I came in as a freshman. Well, AYOs meant for all you others. So Jay was on on the bench, and he was sleeping. Down and he was sleeping. Well, the coaches were calling for him, and I'll never forget this. They finally got his attention. He ran out, and 2 plays later, he ran off the field after getting an interception. So those are kind of things that you see on the sidelines happen and are unbelievable, but they happen. So you see these incredible guys. Some, like I said, some pan out, some don't. But yeah, those are some of the better athletes that I've seen at Ohio State.
I'm not gonna lie, when the minute you said an offensive lineman ran like what was a 400-meter dash? Is that what you said?
Absolutely.
Could you imagine an offensive lineman that big running like that? I'm like, oh my god.
And it was at the state championships.
Wow.
So
I mean, I mean, he played in the league for a lot of years. He was
yeah.
a Super Bowl champion with with the Redskins. I mean,
Oh god, now y'all got me thinking about some of these big 300 something pound like offensive linemen that I've seen, these big fat dudes, and I'm like, I would love to see y'all run. It's something I've been hoping to see when back in the Notre Dame game, Tyreek's big fat self almost caught an interception. I said, I wish he caught it so I could see his big fat self run down the sideline.
Well, TG, you would be amazed at some of the exploits some of these linemen performed. You have sprinters. Yeah, you even have a couple of hurdlers, big guys that hurdled in high school. So yeah.
Jesus.
what did you
They,
run
they,
your
they
40 in?
put on some weight, but they were athletes.
Hey, I can believe some of them play basketball like Sam Greer and them, but I'm like, y'all being that athletic, I'm like, can I see more of that?
Well, I tell you what, I grew up probably about 20 minutes away from Orlando Pace, and he was one heck of a basketball player. That dude
Yeah.
could ball. I mean, he dunk. I mean, he was agile for as big as he was. I mean, we used to see him in the mall walking, and he towered over everybody, and you could see him a mile away. I mean, Orlando was just walking into Sandusky Mall, and everybody's just like, "There's Orlando." But the dude, I mean, a heck of a basketball player. I mean,
Tremendous
What
athlete.
What's funny is when he stand next to some of the other offensive linemen, he be making them look like children. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, you that big? you make these big offensive linemen look like children. That's just
Imagine coming into Ohio State and starting at left tackle
as a freshman.
as a freshman.
Right.
He was a tremendous athlete. I remember watching basketball games of him in high school, and just the feet, the agility, the ability to move laterally and jump. So Orlando is always going to be legendary.
Oh man.
I got to
Like
see.
that's how you knew you got an all-time great offensive lineman when they're doing stuff like that. It's like the only other offensive lineman that's even close to him is like LaCharles Bentley. And he was a freak.
I
Yeah.
got to see a high school game because my mom went to Sandusky High School, and actually, Earl Bruce coached my uncle and was my mom's teacher. But I got to see Orlando when he played for Sandusky play Fremont Ross, and they had a guy on that team named Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
So I got to see two Hall of Fame, future Hall of Famers playing a high school game. So I mean, that was a
Awesome.
sight to see. I mean,
And both impactful athletes on the field. You know,
Right.
they weren't late bloomers, so to speak. So, you know, had not Charles's cousin attended Michigan, and Ohio State really didn't do a good job recruiting him in the '70s, Charles may have been a Buckeye.
well, where Charles went to school, they also had another guy that went to Michigan from there too, named Rob Lotto, who was a running back. So I mean, for some reason, that school they love Michigan for
They love
some.
Michigan and Notre Dame. We recruited a kid, Joey Johnson, who was a defensive back. He ended up going to Notre Dame, and that was one of my few recruiting losses. But yeah, Fremont Ross has always had some great athletes coming out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for some reason they don't go to Ohio State for whatever the reason.
Well, you know, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
If you're not man enough to come up to Ohio State and avoid the pressure, you go to Michigan.
One thing I would love to hear, Vaughn, though, is you did say that you were being recruited by Woody. Tell us a Woody story,
Well,
if you can. I
I,
mean,
I, I will tell you a revealing story about Woody, because you see the intense man on the sidelines. But I'll tell you what, my end of my junior year, two of my other teammates, we decided we're going to get an apartment together. And one of the teammates regretfully backed out without really telling us. So we're at spring. We had already given up our rooms on campus, so we're basically going to be homeless if we don't get a place to stay. Well, of course, we went over to Earl and said, hey, coach, we don't have a place to stay. He said, well, you should have thought about that when I said, well, we had plans to rent a triple, but now we only have money for two, and we don't have a place to stay because one guy backed out. Well, nothing I can do. So as we're walking from his St. John Arena's office through the military armory, we were just walking by Woody's office, and Woody was in there, and he basically said, "Hey guys, why so gloomy?" And I said, "Well, Coach, we don't have a place to stay." So we shared the story of what happened with him, and he said, "Well, I want to see if I can help you guys out." So I get to my dorm, and it wasn't an hour later, I get a phone call. "Hey, Vaughn, I understand you and Shaun don't have a place to stay. I've got an apartment off of Henderson Road. Here's the address. If you can meet with us tomorrow, we can show you the apartment. If it's something you like, you guys can rent it." And we said, "Well, how much is it?" It was reasonable. I mean, I want to say it was probably $200 a month for each of us, so it was like close to $500 a month. But that was within reason. And we went over there, took a place, and we were able to get in for the weekend. So those are the little things that Woody could do because of his community connections that really helped us out. And I'll always be grateful for just that small little thing that he did for us.
it's amazing.
That's awesome. Shaun, anything you want to throw out?
I just want to say, Vaughn, thank you so much for taking the time. You're welcome to come back anytime, and we'd love to have you come back during the season and just talk some football with us.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's my association with Ohio State still is strong to this day, and I appreciate you guys. Bring me on, and TG, you're a young blood, so but you're coming up right as an Ohio State Buckeye fan, and anytime you need me, just let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And for everybody, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss this. And if you haven't, go back and check out our interview with Doug Lamarice. You're gonna love it. I promise. To leave a comment section in that video, as well as leave comment sections in this. If you have future questions for Von B, put them down. Put them down in the comment section, and we'll try. The next time we have him back on, we'll try to answer them. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Shaun, you want to say anything else?
Just want to say thanks again, Vaughn. It's been a pleasure, and just look forward to having you on again, buddy. So,
Pleasure's all mine.
Yes, thank you. All right. So how we end this video off as always? OH.
IO.